Malaysia Capital CEO Mthunzin Mdwabe says he will not apologize for the bribery allegations he made against ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula and 3 cabinet ministers. The Bela Magistrate Court in Limpopo has postponed to next week Friday the bail application of 3 accused in the February 2020 burglary at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Palapala farm. And South Africa has seemingly taken a hardened stance towards Israel and resolved to withdraw all of its diplomats from Tel Aviv for consultations on the situation in Gaza. A very good afternoon. If you've just joined us, we're coming to you live from our studios here in Johannesburg. Welcome to Week in Review. Now, this is the program where we review some of the biggest stories to come out of the week. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabala. Leading our bulletin this hour, suspects have been arrested across the country since May this year on charges ranging from illegal mining, drug production and trafficking, and ATM heists. An intergovernmental team led by Defence and Military Veterans Minister Thandi Modise announced the figures yesterday. She also provided an update on the progress made to combat illegal mining and related crimes. This comes after President Cyril Ramaphosa authorized the deployment of 3,300 soldiers. Now, this is to assist police in the fight against illegal mining.
The police have got this. We go in support of the police.
High confidence from the Defence Minister, but on the ground, the situation remains different.
Among those who were arrested also are 63 South Africans. 63 South Africans. 2,739 foreign nationals from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Lesotho, DRC, Nigeria, Kenya, Pakistan, and Uganda.
4,000 suspected illegal miners have been arrested since May, most of them foreign nationals.
We will match fire by fire. On the question of whether naming these countries is divisive, first of all, we are South Africans. Lives, property, dignity, safety of South Africa must be priority to us as ministers of South Africa. I don't think it is our job as ministers to protect the images of other countries when ours is going to the tatters because other people's are coming in and disregarding, disrespecting our laws and our dignities within our own borders.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has deployed over 3,000 army personnel to assist police in dealing with the crime issues of gangs and illegal mining at a cost of approximately 490 million rand. Police Minister Bheki Cele has welcomed the additional support and says it will help them deal with the crimes decisively.
They resist and they are armed, but also they begin to interfere with the lives of the communities around that area. River Lee is one case, Kagiso is one case, Krugersdorp is one case. So these operations is not just to see them, to arrest them when you see them. It's to go where they are and make sure that they are flushed out of the system of doing so.
With 6,100 derelict and abandoned mines left unmanned across the country, turning the tide against illegal mining will be a hard-going battle. Justice Minister Ronald Lamula says once arrested, suspects will face the full might of the law.
Between April and August 2023, a total of 329 accused were convicted of offences related to illicit mining, whilst 8 were acquitted. During the same period, we had 7,351 cases in which accused were convicted of contraventions of the Immigration Act, while 178 cases contained acquittals. As at November 2023, a total of 4,068 cases containing contraventions of the Immigration Act are outstanding.
But Home Affairs' ability to process and deport the detained illegal immigrants has been questioned.
And yes, Home Affairs is building up capacity to deal with, to address the deportation of illegal immigrants in the country. As indicated by Minister Lamola, part of the CARA funds have also been allocated to support the ability of Home Affairs to deport people outside of the country.
The Interministerial Anti-Crime Task Team says they'll have a zero-tolerance approach to those who undermine the laws of the country. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News.
We shift our focus to this story now. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has opened a criminal injury case against businessman Mthunzi Mntwabe, who accused him of wanting a bribe along with 3 cabinet ministers. Tuja Holding CEO Mntwabe claims Mbalula, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwane, Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi and Higher Education Minister Dr. Blade Zimande tried to solicit a R500 million bribe from the botched R5 billion UIF job scheme. Mntwabe has now received legal letters of demand from all 4 to withdraw his words publicly.
ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has taken to the legal system to challenge businessman Mthunzi Mntwabe over allegations that he and 3 ministers wanted a bribe of 500 million rands. The ANC Secretary General opened a case against Mntwabe at the Sandton police station to seek recourse. Mntwabe has publicly refused to open a case of bribery against the politicians, citing a lack of confidence against the police and the legal system in the country.
I've got nothing to do with Mntwabe. I know him from far. I've got no business dealing with him. Neither his people or whoever that he claims would have said these things and all of that. I know nothing. I know nothing about this from where I'm seated. So I have to stand up. Under normal circumstances, things like this, we leave them and then we issue a statement, but it remains. I'm here today. I've opened the case, and then I am also challenging him in terms of the law. If it's not, we will meet in court, and that's what I'm determined to do. To deal with these particular allegations. And that is what is important.
Finance Minister Enoch Godongwane's legal team has sent Mntwabe a legal letter of demand for him to retract his words publicly within 7 days or face legal action. Mbalula says Mntwabe is making allegations without any evidence to substantiate them.
Names have been thrown, and there is no cause of action against those people, but spurious allegations are then made against individuals, including the Secretary General of the ANC. And then it is simply said, it's business as usual. No, it is said he gave a blessing to this. And then he will also be part of this 10%. It ends there, full stop.
The ANC's national officials have called Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi to come and explain the UIF tender scandal on Monday. Nxesi has also denied any bribery allegations, but revealed that Mntwabe was being investigated by his department for wrongdoing. Samkele Masego, SABC News, Sandton.
Now, meanwhile, Tusha Capital CEO says he will not apologize for the bribery allegations he made against ANC Secretary General Mbalula and 3 cabinet ministers. Mntwabe claims the 4 tried to solicit a 10% bribe for the now failed R5 billion UIF deal his company would have received for a jobs project. SABC News economics editor Tsepo Mwai has interviewed Mntwabe.
I noted the Secretary General went quite a big show. I saw of going to lay a charge, I think, for criminal injuria. The other letters from him. So he laid a charge for criminal injuria, and then I received a letter to retract and to apologize or something like that. I'm not too bothered by that, quite frankly. I think people must do what they have to do. Of course, I am going to go back and tell them, well, there's no apology from me, so I think their lawyers may as well start now if they want to, because they're waiting for me to respond. And I will respond. I'll do the honorable thing. I'll do the right thing and respond to them out of respect. But I certainly have no regrets about what I did. Especially sitting now, I think there was a time when I was very apprehensive, very, very apprehensive. I was apprehensive because of what one might expect in an environment. I've only been back home for 2 years. I'm trying to reintegrate into my home. I've made it my business that I'm back home for good. And you're starting to make friendships and you're starting to make enemies. It's not a nice thing. You have to have that interrogation and that debate with yourself. My apprehension now is for a different kind. I'm told that I'm not safe, but I hear some theories about why I'm safe, so I'm going to work with the ones that say I'm safe as opposed to being unsafe, and I'm going to defend whatever comes my way, because I stand by what I said, and I'm very, very certain about what I said. I have no doubt in my mind. And when I look at the response, which I never thought of, I must tell you, and more often than not, when I do things, I don't think of response. When I see the response on LinkedIn, I see the response on Twitter, I see the response on Instagram, it's been mind-boggling.
What's going to be your next step? Obviously, you are quite firm in terms of this contract. Are you confident that you will eventually be given a space and time to execute?
For me, the way forward is to defend when I need to defend, fight where I need to fight. Hopefully it's not going to be necessary. I don't see why we should fight when we want to create over 700,000 jobs. I would rather ask for people to collaborate. I would rather ask for people to ask questions if they don't understand. I'm happy to do that. The minister was offered that I go and explain things to him. He refused. I don't understand that. That for me makes no sense.
I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm sure you've been asked it many times, on the allegation of soliciting a bribe, a 500 million rand. You've made it clear that you're not going to mention who the intermediaries are that approach you. But
For now.
Okay.
At some stage they have to be mentioned. I mean, we're caught and not mention them. It would be ludicrous. I mean, what am I going to run my case on?
All right, more news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, several faith-based organizations, advocacy groups and political parties are gathering in Cape Town for a march to show solidarity with Palestine. They'll hand over a memorandum, one to the Speaker of the National Assembly, the other to the Premier of the Western Cape. They are calling for an end to genocide in Palestine. Let's dip in there just to give you the visuals of what exactly is taking place right now.
Stand for the Devil's Alliance! Because what I have been witnessing for the past month is nothing but the work of the devil and the allies of the devil that are murdering and massacring innocent civilians, that are bombing hospitals and mosques and churches, that are even killing people as they are running away, as they are trying to seek shelter, and then when they get to their shelter, they still get bombed. A school was bombed yesterday, Al-Buraq school in Gaza, where 50 Palestinians were killed, were martyred, adding to the list of 11,000 in 1 month. Do you know that in the Blitz in London in 1940s in the Second World War, 43,000 people were killed in 8 months. They've killed more than 11,000 in 1 month. This is the work of the devil, and this is exactly what Zionism is. It is an evil, apartheid, racist, terrorist, fascist ideology. And I will prove to you what I'm saying. Ze'ev Jabotinsky, one of the founder members of the Zionist movement, you know what he said in 1938? He said we must get the American Jews to give us $500 million, and then we can get the Palestinians to move to Saudi Arabia and Iraq. In 1967, Menachem Begin, he said that we must destroy the refugee camps in Gaza and move the people into the Sinai Desert. The project began over 75 years ago, and the project is in full swing. But we are going to say from here, the Cape of Good Hope, لن نترك غزة وفلسطين وحدها. We will never ever leave Palestine alone until Palestine is free. I want to say And that is why you see people like Dean Michael Weiner is a person from a humanitarian aspect that sees what is happening. The world is blind. The world has been blinded by Zionism. The babies are being killed. Babies are killed. Hey, Biden, what you say? How many babies did you kill today? Hey, Michael Weiner.
Free Palestine! Pleasure, I'm very pleased. I represent the voice of Archbishop Talo Makoba, who's currently in Mthatha attending to rituals and rites honoring the martyrs of Botswana. He has sent a message which I will read. And the Archbishop says, the unspeakable violence we are seeing in the land which three religions call holy is the result of the denial of people's rights and the failure of the leaders to work out a just solution for governing the land which they now occupy. He says that the war crimes in which children, women and men are killed indiscriminately, whether in Gaza, the West Bank or Israel, must stop, and it must stop now, not just for a ceasefire, but forever. He says that the hostages must be released and all parties must learn the painful lesson of the last month, that war does not resolve human conflict. He further says, as much as statements and marches should continue for their moral power, we need to elevate our interventions to stop any nation which supplies weapons to parties in the conflict from doing so. We need to call out the shameful partisanship of Western powers in this conflict and to commend countries which have suspended diplomatic ties with Israel and to call on those countries to review diplomatic ties with countries which are supplying arms. If only the world leaders would invest half as much money and energy into peacemaking as they invest in war, we would have peace. It is time to end violence over the homeland, the Holy Land. It is time to end Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories along with all of Israel's unjust policies against Palestinians. And then, beloved, lastly, we commit ourselves as a church to pray and to work for an end in apartheid in the Holy Land and for a just and sustainable peace. And we will not forget others elsewhere who suffer, such as in the Ukraine, as in the Sudan, where a church was bombed on All Saints' Day on the 1st of November, and where 9,000 have been killed, 5.5 million have been displaced and almost wiped off the face of the earth. And so, sisters and brothers, in spite of the apparent hopelessness of many of the situations we face in the world, and we cannot forget Hanover Park, we cannot forget Manenberg, Khayelitsha, and all over the Kaapse where we are, killed and terrorized by drug lords and by the terrorism of drugs. And then lastly, we must take assurance from our holy books, Muslim, Christian and Jew, that justice will prevail and that ultimately we are destined to live in the salam, the shalom, and the peace which our Creator promises. Maibuye Palestine! Maibuye!
Free, free Palestine! 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 Professor Yusuf Chikde. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Who are we? We are all Palestine! Who are we? We are all Palestine! In a billions, we are Palestine! Today is our Armistice Day, internationally brought to the end the terrible wars in Europe that the Europeans fought against one another, and they And we ask, and the most intense battles of those wars are taking place in Palestine. And we want peace. We are asking for an immediate ceasefire in Palestine. What do we want? A ceasefire. We want Palestine to get humanitarian aid immediately. Immediately. We want Palestinians to be under the international protection of the world. And I'm inviting you, this is not the first or the last time that we're getting here together. I'm inviting you to come together tomorrow at the promenade to demonstrate in your numbers that we will stand there and we won't tolerate any apartheid spaces. No, friends of Israel, we're going to stop the genocide promotion that's going to take place in the promenade tomorrow at 12. So the other thing, are you going to come? In our numbers, on the 18th of November, we are going to go in all the stores of Kaiwai. Hello? Somebody cut it. Yeah. Okay. Hello, everybody. Mr. Premier! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Okay. For the moment, the Premier cut electricity, but it came back on again. So tomorrow, we're going to go to the promenade. On the 18th, we're going to go to Kaiwai stores. And we're going to say that Kravitz mustn't support the genocide over there. Remember, all of us going to all of the Kaiwai stores to boycott them so that we don't do that. The other thing, they're making weapons over there in Powder Island by a company called Paramount. We're going to go there and we're going to stop the war. We're going to stop the warmongering. We're going to stop the production of those factories. That is what we're going to do. So join us in all this. But then, why are all the people so quiet who are for human rights? There is a person called Albie Sachs, a great human rights activist. Why is he quiet? Albie, the people of Gaza are on the genocide. Why don't you speak up, Albie? Yes. Dennis Davis, why don't you speak up? Alan Windy, you are complicit in genocide and we won't tolerate you. We are going to ensure that we're going to stop the genocide in Africa. Viva Palestine, viva! You know this is the previous building, right? Yes, so you can see me standing with our backs to him. That's what he deserves. Everybody, the next person is Mr. Kasim Khan from the PAC. Viva Palestine, viva! Viva Mandela, viva! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! I bring you greetings of the leadership of the Pan Africanist Congress of Azanium. Africa, Israel! People, I want to tell We must identify the killers. They live here in Cape Town. Our children go to school with them. We work for them in their factories. We must shut them down. Sabir! Free Palestine!
Before we continue with the program, I'm looking for a Faiza George. Your son is here in front. He looks very sad, but he looks safely amongst the marshals. Where's Faiza George? Faiza George, come to the truck. We'll continue with the program. Faiza George, we welcome now to speak Mr. Mervyn Bennett. Mr. Mervyn Bennett is from Jews for Free Palestine. I'll give the mic for you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am a Jew. I am standing here saying free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. I am an anti-Zionist Jew, and I say Palestine must be free from the river to the sea. No Jew who needs to be told what a Holocaust is. There is no Jew who needs a lecture on genocide. My father lost his entire family in Eastern Europe, and I was old enough in 1945 to remember the...
All right, those are live visuals there from Cape Town, where faith-based organizations are marching in solidarity with the people of Palestine as the war rages on. The number of those killed is soaring, the latest figure being at least 10,100, and the majority being Palestinians. This is something as well that U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has decried, saying far too many Palestinians have been killed. However, the U.S., of course, differs with others on who is exactly to blame for what we've witnessed since the 7th of October. We'll actually be unpacking the latest developments in the Middle East conflict with Professor Richard Calland in a short while. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome yet again. Thank you very much for staying with us. The health system in Gaza is on its knees. Half of the enclave's 36 hospitals and 2/3 of its primary health care centers are not functioning at all. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, was briefing the United Nations Security Council. The sitting focused on the spiraling health crisis amidst continued attacks on health facilities in the Gaza Strip.
The council began its session with a moment of silence for all the victims on both sides of this conflict, before Dr. Tedros took to the floor, calling the barbaric attack on Israel by Hamas unjustifiable, while commiserating with the people of Gaza who are enduring the destruction of their homes, their lives, and their communities.
The situation on the ground is impossible to describe. Hospital corridors crammed with the injured, the sick, the dying, morgues overflowing, surgery without anesthesia, tens of thousands of displaced people sheltering at hospitals, families crammed into overcrowded schools desperate for food and water. More than 10,800 people have now been killed in Gaza, almost 70% of them women and children. On average, a child is killed every 10 minutes in Gaza.
He pointed to extremely difficult conditions under which health workers in the enclave were working, with WHO verifying more than 250 attacks on healthcare in Gaza and the West Bank, in addition to 25 attacks on health facilities in Israel.
As we speak, there are reports of firing outside the Al-Shifa and Rantisi hospitals. Half of the Gaza Strip's 36 hospitals and 2/3 of its primary healthcare centers are not functioning at all. Those that are functioning are operating way beyond their capacities. The health system is on its knees, and yet somehow it's continuing to deliver some life-saving care. The best way to support those health workers and the people they serve is by giving them the tools they need to deliver that care. Medicines, medical equipment, and fuel for hospital generators.
He then took a personal turn, reflecting on his experience as a young child in Ethiopia caught up in war.
I understand what the children of Gaza must be going through, because as a child, I went through the same thing, the same. The sound of gunfire and shells whistling through the air, the smell of smoke after they struck, tracer bullets in the night sky, the fear, the pain, the loss. These things have stayed with me throughout my life. I know how the children are feeling, and I know how the parents are also feeling. The children and parents of Gaza and Israel want and need the same thing that my family wanted and needed: peace and security.
Mr. President, Excellencies,
While the leader of the Palestinian Red Crescent Society had a pointed message for the Council.
I'm calling upon the Council members on behalf of the staff and volunteers of the emergency medical teams, the doctors and nurses who are besieged in Gaza hospitals, to do all you can to spare further deaths and sufferings. I was prepared to inform the Council about the critical shortages of fuel, food, and water. But honestly, now our utmost concern is the direct threat to the lives of all those wounded and sick. Please listen to the cries of children soaked in blood and asking why. And what have they done? And why the world is so indifferent to their lives.
Thousands of wounded Israelis.
Israel's ambassador Gilad Erdan defended his country's actions in Gaza, arguing that Hamas operatives were embedded in health facilities, including tunnel networks under hospitals, while accusing the militant group of using ambulances to transfer weapons. Sherman Briceby's SABC News, New York.
South Africa has seemingly taken a hardened stance towards Israel and resolved to withdraw all of its diplomats from Tel Aviv for consultations. Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, made the announcement in Pretoria when she briefed the media on outcomes of last week's cabinet meeting. SABC News senior reporter Kenny Mapanga filed this report.
Expressing disappointment with Israel's continued bombing of schools and clinics in Gaza and the closure of humanitarian passages, Cabinet has resolved to withdraw South Africa's diplomats in Israel. A move that Minister Ntshavheni says is a quote-unquote, a serious signal that South Africa takes a dim view of the situation.
A genocide under the watch of the international community cannot be tolerated. Another Holocaust in the history of humankind is not acceptable. And the South African government has decided to withdraw all its diplomats in Tel Aviv for consultation.
In addition to this cabinet decision is an instruction to DIRCO to look into the conduct of the Israeli ambassador to South Africa for what government has termed disparaging remarks, which Minister Ntshavheni noted are in direct contrast to those made by previous ambassadors who acknowledged that acts of the Israeli government are a repeat of apartheid.
The position of the ambassador of Israel in South Africa is becoming very untenable. Cabinet has decided to instruct DIRCO to take necessary measures within the diplomatic channels and protocols to deal with the conduct of the ambassador of Israel to South Africa.
Meanwhile, as the year 2024 draws closer and political parties as well as independents are beginning to gear up for the looming general elections, Cabinet has called on all eligible voters to register to vote.
Cabinet is calling on all eligible voters to register to vote for the 2024 general elections at your nearest voting station during this registration weekend. Online voter registration has been opened since February 2023, and citizens are urged to use this facility to register or update their details.
Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Pretoria.
Meanwhile, the Department of International Relations says it has given a formal diplomatic representation or démarche to Israel's ambassador to South Africa, that's Eliev Betleskovsky. The department has summoned the ambassador over what it calls his recent unfortunate conduct in relation to the Israel-Hamas war. Earlier this week, Minister Naledi Pandor indicated the ambassador had made a number of comments without having discussed them with senior members of the government, warning that it would not be tolerated. SABC News understands that it found the ambassador's criticism of Pretoria's stance on the war in Gaza problematic. On Thursday, DIRCO Director General Zane Dango expressed South Africa's concerns over the attacks on Gaza. Pretoria has also condemned Hamas' attack on civilians, saying those actions should be investigated for war crimes while calling for a ceasefire. It's clear that the ongoing war in Gaza will continue to have a profound socioeconomic impact on the occupied Palestinian territories as a whole. Now, that's contained in a new rapid assessment of the United Nations entitled The Gaza War: Expected Socioeconomic Impacts on the State of Palestine. The assessment finds that after 1 month of fighting, the Palestinian economy as a whole has already lost 4% of GDP, and that if fighting continues for another month, the cumulative effect will be an 8% GDP loss.
If the pictures of devastation and grief don't tell the story, then perhaps the numbers will do the trick, as the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza also becomes a development crisis.
The Syrian economy used to lose 1% of GDP per month. We have lost already 4% of GDP, not just of Gaza economy. I need to insist, even though the fighting is in Gaza, but the whole Palestinian economy has lost already 4% of GDP. If this fight continues till the end of the second month, the loss will be more than 8% of GDP. And if it continues till the end of the year, we are going to have a 12% loss in GDP.
Gaza was already in dire straits before the recent conflict broke out after Hamas's attack on Israel. An unemployment rate of 41%. 63% of households were food insecure, and nearly 80% of children were in dire need of assistance. Add to that a death toll of more than 10,500, including over 4,000 children, while as of November 3rd, 50% of housing units had been totally destroyed and over 200,000 units partially damaged. And if the war persists, the assessment warns that Gaza's population might have nowhere to go. With 96%, almost the entire population of Gaza facing unprecedented deprivation of all essential services while falling into multidimensional poverty.
Even more important, if I may say, is the loss to human development. After 2 months of fighting, Palestine, and not just Gaza, would have lost 16 years of human development. Health and education and infrastructure and economic growth, that would be wiped out. Palestine would go back to 2005. All the investments, all the work, all the hard work of the international community and the Palestinian people.
All right, let's take you back to the city of Cape Town now, where faith-based organizations are marching in solidarity with the people of Palestine. We believe that Secretary General of the African National Congress, Fikile Mbalula, is now addressing the crowds. Let's listen in.
When I say my boo, yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters. With the guns. We are gathered here in the city of Cape Town as South Africans to give meaning to what the founding father of our nascent democracy, His Excellency President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, when he said in 1995 to the people of Gaza, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. We therefore want to say to the people of Cape Town, you are upholding that legacy and you are the true sons and daughters of our liberator. Today, we are here to send a clear message. As we gather here in Cape Town, we appreciate the steps and the diplomacy that is being undertaken by our ANC-led government. The SG, Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, says that our government must act fast. Yes. We have to give meaning to what we mean by act fast. Comrade President, we did not ask for a consultation process. Yes. We asked for the embassy of Israel to be shut down now. Yes, clearly as South Africans gathered here today, as political parties, all political formations gathered here, all worker formations gathered here, all student formations, all religious formations, and youth formations are saying that the embassy in Israel must be shut down now. No! We do not want any delays of consultation processes. That embassy shut down and every South African to be called back from the apartheid Zionist state of Israel.
All right, live visuals there from the city of Cape Town. Inkosi Mandla, the grandson of the late struggle hero Nelson Mandela and first president of democratic South Africa, speaking there, saying what they have requested is for the embassy of Israel to be shut down, not consultation, which is what the government has resolved to do at this point, to withdraw diplomats and bring them back for consultation. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Professor Richard Calland, political analyst and constitutional law expert, to unpack what has been happening in the past few weeks. Professor, good afternoon and thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Funda. How are you?
No, I'm great. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Perhaps to start exactly there, where Mandla Mandela is stating that withdrawal for consultation is not what they seek. They are seeking for there to be fast action, decisive action that is taken. And for them, what would be satisfactory in this particular moment is for the embassy to be shut down, sever ties. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, it's a difficult diplomatic choice to make. Minister Pandor, Naledi Pandor, our Minister for International Relations, has, despite offering very strong opinions on the subject, rightfully in my view, including in Parliament this week, her line has been that these diplomatic kind of grandstanding of closing embassies and so on, what does it achieve, she asks? Does it help solve the problem? And as well as being principled, I think she always asks that question. She's asked it many times in relation to Ukraine. How do we get to peace? What is the solution? What's the pathway? And I think that's the question one has to ask here. Yes, it's clear that Israel is impervious, it would seem, to public opinion around the world, impervious to its responsibilities under international law. How can it be driven to a more reasoned and peaceful position? That's a very difficult question to ask when you're faced by such a trenchant and apparently aggressive and hostile military power as Israel is in relation to the Palestinians. So I tend to think it will do little good, but what it does do, I suppose, in the way that apartheid South Africa was isolated, is that it drives slowly Israel into a position where it is an international pariah.
You ask a very pertinent question, what is the pathway to peace? But it seems this step that they have taken is criticized on all fronts. I mean, listening to the engagement in Parliament with the minister, you've got the Freedom Front Plus that said if you want consultation, pick up the phone and consult. You do not need to withdraw diplomats. On the other end, you've got the EFF that said, no, that's not enough. Apologies, we need to sever ties. It's merely kicking for touch. According to them, it's grandstanding where the ANC or the ANC-led government must be seen to be doing something. So it seems nothing that they've done in this particular moment is satisfactory.
Well, that's because it's such an impossibly difficult situation. And there are obviously no easy solutions. So any country that is mindful of its international law responsibilities, wanting to encourage other state actors to be mindful of their international responsibilities and wanting to maintain the notion of multilateral dialogue as a route to peace, is going to find this a very difficult situation to handle. It's very easy to take extreme positions on this issue, but how does that help? And again, I come back to the notion of what's the pathway to peace here. To what pressure points will the Israeli state and its government respond? What pressure can be realistically put on Israel for it to reconsider its current position, which is one of extreme military aggression towards a civilian population that is being subjected to what some people are now calling genocide?
But then when we look at Israel, they consistently state that theirs is a position of defending its people, that in this instance they were not the aggressor, something that the minister also went on to unpack and say they've got to be factual in their engagements in Parliament, that here you need to get to the genesis of the problem, that Israel continues to occupy Palestinian land. So where does this place this whole situation if they're all pursuing peace? But it seems there's nobody that's willing to take on the responsibility and say, yes, we are the aggressor in this position.
Well, we can debate the various points of international law at stake, which include a very complex and detailed conversation about whether, in fact, Gaza is an occupied territory or not. And if it is an occupied territory, then the state of Israel owes a duty to protect its own citizens, because in that scenario, the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, are in fact equivalent to Israeli citizens and should be treated the same as a matter of law. They are complex questions. It's clear that Israel is a serial transgressor of international law. It's impervious, it seems, to pressure brought to bear on it. And it seems to me there is a parallel here with the apartheid-era government. You know, often people make the comparison that Israel is an apartheid state with Bantustans like Gaza, like the occupied territories on the West Bank, and so on. What was it in the end that brought apartheid South Africa to its knees? What was it that brought apartheid South Africa to the negotiating table and allowed for the peaceful handing over of power almost 30 years ago in 1994? In the end, it was a multi-class, multi-race, multi-state international campaign, the anti-apartheid movement, combined with economic and sporting sanctions, and lastly, a shift in global power with the end of the Cold War. Now, it seems to me interesting to consider whether a similar shift in the international landscape is happening now. We're seeing the formation of the BRICS Plus. We're seeing the rise of India alongside China. We're seeing a real shift in economic and political power to the global south. Does that change the calculation? Does that mean that the Western powers, who generally have proved themselves to be allies of Israel, the United States most obviously, Germany because of its history with the Holocaust and so on, means that Israel has been able to get away with those transgressions of international law for a long time? Does the shift in the international balance of power make a difference to this? That remains to be seen. But the first step, in my view, bearing in mind the history, is for an international campaign to form. That is happening. Around the world, there are protests taking place almost on a daily basis in capital cities across the world. And it's not just Muslim people who are protesting. It is people of all faiths, of all ethnicities, of all races, and increasingly Jewish people as well, who are recognizing that the Israeli state is not acting in their name. It is because of its aggression and hostility and murderous behavior towards innocent civilians in Gaza. So that's the state of play. And of course, there'll be a big march tomorrow in London, which may be one of the biggest ever. What we're seeing then is a global tide of opinion already turned, I would say, against Israel. Will that make any difference? Of course not in the short term. But it is one step in the direction of isolating Israel, as South Africa's apartheid-era government was isolated and eventually driven to the negotiating table.
What I'm gathering from you, Professor, is that this move by government of the withdrawal of diplomats was justified, as opposed to what we heard even from the IFP's Mkhuleko Hlengwa, who said this is regressive diplomacy. If you are to be a mediator, you need to be neutral. You cannot prematurely condemn any party if you're wanting to bring them to the table. But what I'm hearing from you is that this move was important and it was justified.
I believe so, because you have to read the room. And if the country in which you are engaging, the state in which you're engaging, in this case Israel, is impervious to reason, is impervious to their international law responsibilities, and will not listen to diplomatic messages, then what choice do you have? And the idea that South Africa would be a mediator in Israel, I frankly have always thought was unrealistic, given that South Africa, its government, the ANC, has such a long history of being an ally, a supporter of the Palestinian people. You mentioned the Mandela legacy. Part of Mandela's message to his people was about global solidarity. It was a message that said, until the Palestinians are free, we cannot be free. And I think that tradition, that political perspective on the conflict in the Middle East and Israel and Palestine, it runs very deep within the DNA of the ANC, the governing party, and therefore within the government. And it's a principled position, it's a long-held position, and it's one that I'm pleased to see our current government is maintaining.
Professor, thank you very much for your insights this afternoon. That's Professor Richard Calland, political analyst and constitutional law expert. And unfortunately, that's where we leave it for today. How time flies when you're having fun. Have a wonderful afternoon further. See you tomorrow.